Hello, my name's Olurotimi Osha. We are still in the month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. Today, I'm continuing with my discussions on Odysseus because, like most people in America, I'm excited about Christopher Nolan's upcoming movie, The Odyssey, which should be released July 17, 2026. That's a correction. I think I might have said July 27 in an earlier clip that I did, but it's July 17, 2026. And of course, one of my favorite actors, Matt Damon, will be playing Odysseus. Odysseus, I guess Matt Damon will be just about right, in age. The Odyssey, because Odysseus was gone, for 20 years. He left in his 30s, for the Trojan War, and then he was gone away from his home, Ithaca, for about 20 years. So he was in his 50s approximately when he came back. But anyway, today, what I want to do is um, do something that's relevant to Mental Awareness Month. Odysseus feigned madness at one time in order to actually avoid going to the Trojan War. Homer doesn't note this in the Iliad, and it's not also, and neither is it in the Odyssey. But other Greek poets, Greek authors, historians, tragedians, um, mention it, like Euripides. Euripides actually mentions it in his play Palamedes. So Palamedes is very significant. Um, so Odysseus pretended to be mad in order to avoid going to the Trojan War. And I'll get into it and I'll describe the story. But it's interesting how it's sort of a parallel, with the biblical King David. David is one of my favorite characters in the Bible. But when you read the life of Odysseus, you see how he parallels King David a lot. David was also at one time feigned madness, by the way, right? He pretended to be mad at one time. David, um, when he was a fugitive running from the wrath of the king, um, King Saul, and King Saul was trying to kill him out of envy. David fled um, to the land of the Philistines, to the land of the king of Gath, Achish. And when the Philistines saw him, of course, David was their sworn enemy, having defeated Goliath. When the Philistines saw him, he feared they would kill him because he was alone without his soldiers. And he was basically vulnerable. And they took him to the king, King Gath. So instead, David pretended he was crazy, right? David pretended he was crazy. He started drooling saliva from his beard. He started scratching on the gates, like a madman. He started acting like he was crazy. And the Philistine king of Gath, that's Achish, he goes, this guy's clearly crazy. That what is that? Aren't there enough madmen in the land? What's he going to do with this madman? So David knew if he had acted sane, right, the Philistines would kill him because he was this destroyer, of the Philistines. He killed their champion Goliath, right? He had defeated them in war. And so he knew they would kill him, So he was there because he was fleeing from the wrath of his king, Saul, who was trying to kill him as well. So David was very cunning, like Odysseus. It's interesting, and I'm going to describe what Odysseus did. But it's very interesting. There are many parallels between Odysseus and King David. I noticed them because I study the Bible and I've read the Odyssey. I've read the stories by Homer. So I when I read these on my own, I noticed the similarities, the parallels, the strong parallels between these two uh, respective heroes. The Greek hero versus the biblical hero, King David. There's so many parallels in their lives. Interestingly, many scholars have written of the parallels as well, right? Interesting, both of them died around the time they were 70. David died at the age of 70, right? Odysseus, similar. Odysseus, by the way, Odysseus is a mythical, is from Greek mythology, right? He's a legend. He's not really a real person. He wasn't really a historical character. Maybe there was somebody who had similar virtues. So Odysseus is not a real historical figure, right? But he's part of Greek mythology. But according to this Greek mythology, Odysseus lived um, between roughly 1230, right? 1230 and 1160 BC, which would have placed his death at 70 years old, similar to King David. David died at the age of 70. David, according to historical accounts, lived between um, 11 uh, 1140 AD, right? 1140 AD to, sorry, 1040 AD, not 11, 1040 AD to 970, no, 1040 BC to 970 BC. We're counting back. When we're saying BC, so they're counting out before Christ. You're counting down, right? So uh, the age is increasing as you're counting in reverse order. You're counting backwards. So David lived from 1140 BC to 970 BC, making him 70 years old when he died. And it's in the Bible, right? And Odysseus is supposed to have lived from roughly 1230 BC, uh, 1230 BC to 1160 BC. So Odysseus, the story of Odysseus, he lived before King David, right? He lived before King David, so it wouldn't be a case of the Greeks trying to copy uh, the the Hebrews, the Hebrew kings, right, from their history. Although Homer recorded the story much later after the life of Odysseus, right? Again, even though it's mythological, but Homer's writing it as if it was real. By the way, Homer, it's debatable if Homer was even a real person, but Homer wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey around the 8th century BC, right? So 8th century BC. Um, but remarkable similarities, parallels between the two. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another video describing these parallels. You notice even the moral flexibility. You notice how flawed they were, how they were both divinely favored. Of course, Odysseus is favored by the goddess of war, Athena, and she's also goddess of wisdom. She's favored, of course, in the Bible, the Almighty God, Hebrew God, the Almighty God. I'm a Christian, but I'm using my my history hat right now, my scholarly hat. So as a scholar, as a historian, I analyze stuff. I don't, um, so I separate my Christianity when I'm doing my analysis regarding history. So David is called apple of God's eye. But you see, both are very flawed human beings. They're both flawed people. But today, what I'm going to do is, um, so if so, let me just quickly mention this. I had mentioned the moral flexibility of Odysseus, right? Moral flexibility. He lies, he cheats just to get whatever he wants, but he views himself as, he has self-serving interests. You notice even David does that as well. I just mentioned when David pretended he was crazy when he was in the court of the king of Gath, so he wouldn't be killed. He pretended to be crazy. Prior to that, in that same chapter, that's the first book of Samuel, chapter 21, he had gone to the priest of Nob, right, Ahimelech, and he'd lied to the priest, right? He was running from King David, but he lied to the priest that, well, King Saul, he was fleeing from King Saul, that is. He lied that King Saul had sent him on a mission, on a royal mission, and he can't give the details of the business, so he could get some provisions uh, from the priest of Nob, that's Ahimelech. So you see, that's moral flexibility, something that Odysseus would do regularly. Odysseus would lie often, right? I've done an earlier video when he lied to to the Cyclops, right, Polyphemus, and told him his name was nobody, right? So Odysseus would do things like that. He was morally flexible. But today I want to discuss the time Odysseus pretended to be crazy. This might make it into the Christopher Nolan movie, The Odyssey. I don't know, because sometimes directors might use a compendium, right, a mixture of sources, and this is from Euripides. Euripides, it was a tragedian as well. Tragedian, he wrote Greek tragedies and plays, and he wrote about Palamedes. So um, I'm not going to get into the backstory of why the Greeks were going to war against the Trojans, right? So we know Helen of Troy had eloped or been kidnapped by Paris, the son of the king of Troy, right, King Priam. And so the Greeks had sworn an oath to defend the right of Menelaus to marry Helen, right? Menelaus is king of Sparta. Helen of Troy was the daughter of the king of Sparta, and Menelaus inherited that kingship. Now, his brother Agamemnon is the strongest of the Greek kings, so he's the supreme commander. So they're trying to recruit Greek warriors, right, to come to their aid to fight the Trojans for the insults. But uh, Odysseus doesn't volunteer himself. But they need Odysseus. Odysseus is known for his cunning. He's very intelligent, right? Oh, I'm sweating. It's sorry. He's known for his cunning and his intelligence, right? And he's not as rich as the other Greek kings, right? The other Greek kings have a lot of wealth. So Ithaca, his kingdom is very small. So it's kind of like similar to David. Again, I'm going to do another video and compare, just show similarities between Odysseus and King David, the biblical King David. So Odysseus is with his wife and his young son Telemachus, and he, he when he because he had gone to inquire of an oracle, right? He's gone to inquire of an oracle, and that's Odysseus. He's actually faithful to the Greek gods. He goes to inquire if he'll be successful if he goes to war. And the oracle tells him that, well, he will be successful, he won't be killed, but he's going to lose all his men, he'll lose everything, and he'll be gone from his home for 20 years. So he doesn't want to go, right? And so because of that, he decides to pretend that he's gone crazy, right? If he's crazy, obviously he'll be no use to the Greek kings, right, for the war. So they send a message that, oh, that Odysseus can't come because Odysseus is crazy. He's insane. So one of them is suspicious. His name's Palamedes, right? Palamedes is a prince. So Odysseus is known to be like the most cunning, most intelligent, very intelligent of the kings. That's another reason why they want him, of the Greek kings. So there are many Greek city-states. His kingdom is not rich or anything like that. It's Ithaca, it's a small kingdom. But his Odysseus is known to be very resourceful, to be very intelligent. Now, the only person that rivaled him in his intelligence, right? And Odysseus is mortal, right? He's not like Achilles, who's like half immortal. Achilles is a demigod, right? He's the strongest of the warriors, but Achilles is the son of a goddess, right? Thetis, right? So as Zeus wanted to marry her, so that's why Achilles has all that strength. Although his father is mortal, right? Um, but Palamedes is another mortal person. Odysseus is mortal, but they're very intelligent. Palamedes rivals Odysseus in intelligence, right? In fact, Palamedes is said to have been the creator of Greek letters, Greek numbers, right, and dice, right? He created dice for the Greeks, right? To when they were bored, for the soldiers when they were at war and they were bored, so they could play dice. So Palamedes is said to be very intelligent. He rivals Odysseus is in intelligence. So when word gets to the Greek kings that, well, Odysseus can't come because he's crazy, Palamedes is suspicious. So he and Agamemnon is tele no Agamemnon is King Menelaus's brother, right? So both of them go and decide to go to Ithaca to find out, if Odysseus is really crazy or not. So when they get there, Odysseus, knows they're coming, realizes they're coming, so he pretends that he's crazy. So he starts plowing his field. He hitches a an ox to a horse, right? So it's imbalance, an ox and a horse, right? And he's plowing his field with salt instead of seed. So that's erratic. That's definitely crazy. He's pouring salt instead of seed into the furrows, right? And he's using an unstable, unstable beasts of burden, a horse and an ox together at the same time. So that's crazy stuff. So, but Palamedes is still suspicious. So Palamedes decides that, okay, well, this guy's acting erratic. He's definitely showing traits that he's crazy. He decides to go into the palace and takes Telemachus. He's a baby. That's Odysseus's baby. And then he puts him in the way of Odysseus's plow as Odysseus is going, in front of the oxen and the horse as he's plowing the field. So, but Odysseus averts. He averts. He stops, right, and goes to pick up the child, his son, exposing himself that he was pretending, he was malingering. So they saw that he wasn't crazy, right? They saw Odysseus was merely playing a trick on them. He apologizes because it's dishonorable. What he did was dishonorable. He had sworn an oath that he would join with the Greek kings to defend the right of Menelaus to be husband of Helen of Troy. And now he was trying to malinger by pretending he was crazy. So he was forgiven, and that's how Odysseus ends up going to war. But in any event, Odysseus has his revenge. He never forgives Palamedes, right? He never forgives Palamedes for what he did. That's another story. I'll discuss what Odysseus did. Also, Odysseus, to say he's like a moral, he's not a moral character, right? There's a lot of moral flexibility to him, but he's a Greek hero. So he's anti-hero. The things he did are kind of like very funny because let me just say it. I'll do a video and explain later on. Odysseus later on, he never forgives Palamedes for outing him, right, and making him go to war, right. He would actually frame Palamedes later on, right. At some point, Palamedes wanted them to withdraw from the Trojan War, but Odysseus decides to frame him, and he puts some gold in his tent, and then a fake letter, a forged letter that's supposed to be from King Priam, to make it seem like Palamedes had committed treason against the Greeks. When Agamemnon sees it, he believes that Palamedes has sold them out, and so he orders that he should be stoned to death. So Palamedes was stoned to death. So that's Odysseus for you. Very cunning, could be devious, and I'll do another video showing the similarities between King David, biblical King David, and Odysseus, the sacker of Troy and the destroyer of cities, who is going to be the main star. He's the protagonist of Homer's The Odyssey, and Matt Damon is playing him on July 17, 2026. We get to see it. I hope you enjoy it. My name is Olurotimi Osha, and I'll keep you posted. Thank you.